Some of the smartest people who ever lived were also spectacularly, publicly, permanently wrong. And the reason why should make all of us a little more careful. Here is a thought that keeps me up at night. If genius doesn't protect you from being wrong, what exactly does? We tend to imagine that intelligence and certainty travel together, that the smarter someone is, the more we should trust their confidence. But the history of ideas tells a stranger story. Again and again, the brightest minds of an era have staked their reputations on conclusions that turned out to be flatly, embarrassingly false. And they weren't fools. They were the experts. So let's sit with that discomfort for a while, because I think it has something important to teach us about how knowledge actually works. William Thomson, better known as Lord Kelvin, was arguably the most celebrated physicist of the Victorian Age. He gave us the absolute temperature scale that still bears his name. And yet, near the end of the 1800s, he declared that heavier-than-air flying machines were impossible, that radio had no future, and famously that X-rays would prove to be a hoax. The Wright brothers flew a few years later. His most consequential error, though, was calculating the age of the Earth at maybe 20 to 40 million years, far too young for Darwin's evolution to work. He wasn't careless. His math was rigorous. He simply didn't know about radioactivity, a heat source that hadn't been discovered yet. His certainty outran the evidence available to him, and that gap is where he fell. It's tempting to think this only happens to lesser figures, but Albert Einstein makes that comfort impossible. When his own equations suggested the universe might be expanding, he recoiled and inserted a fudge factor, the cosmological constant, to force it to stay still. When Hubble showed the universe really was expanding, Einstein reportedly called that insertion his biggest blunder. And in a deeper way, he spent the last decades of his life resisting quantum mechanics, insisting that God does not play dice with the universe. The experiments have not been kind to that intuition. Here's the fascinating twist, though. That discarded cosmological constant came roaring back in the 1990s to describe dark energy. Sometimes, even the errors of great minds are more interesting than most people's correct answers. Consider Fred Hoyle, a brilliant astronomer who worked out how stars forge the heavier elements. Genuinely Nobel-worthy work. But Hoyle despised the idea of a universe with a beginning. He championed the steady-state theory, a cosmos that had always existed and always would. In fact, he coined the phrase Big Bang on the radio as a term of mockery, and the name he meant as an insult became the label for the winning theory. The evidence, especially the cosmic microwave background discovered in 1965, went decisively against him, and he never fully accepted it. What strikes me is that Hoyle's error wasn't ignorance. It was preference. He wanted a certain kind of universe, and that wanting quietly shaped what he was willing to believe. Linus Pauling is one of only a handful of people to win 2 unshared Nobel Prizes, and his work on chemical bonding is foundational. But near the finish line of the race to decode DNA, he proposed a structure with 3 strands and the phosphates on the inside. A model that was not only wrong but chemically unstable, a mistake a careful student might have caught. Watson and Crick found the double helix shortly after. Later in life, Pauling became convinced that massive doses of vitamin C could prevent cancer and the common cold, a claim that decades of trials have largely not supported. Same towering mind, same confidence, radically different reliability depending on the question. That inconsistency is the real lesson. Brilliance is domain-specific, but certainty rarely knows its own borders. Now I want to be honest and push back on my own story, because it's easy to turn this into a cheap highlight reel of famous people looking dumb. That would be unfair and, frankly, inaccurate. Kelvin's Earth-age calculation was excellent science given what was knowable at the time. Einstein's resistance to quantum mechanics produced some of the sharpest questions in physics, questions that drove real progress. Being wrong at the frontier is not the same as being foolish. It's often the cost of standing at the frontier at all. The failure isn't in holding a wrong idea. It's in holding it too tightly, past the point where the evidence has clearly moved on. So why does this matter today, on a channel about AI and consciousness? Because we are surrounded by confident voices making sweeping claims about machine minds, about what these systems understand, about what's coming next. Some of those voices are brilliant. And if Kelvin, Einstein, Hoyle, and Pauling could be this confident and this wrong, then confidence alone is worth almost nothing as a signal of truth. The honest position on many of the biggest questions right now is that we don't fully know. We have evidence, we have arguments, and we have real uncertainty. That's not a weakness. It's what it actually looks like to think carefully at the edge of what's understood. If there's one thing these stories share, it's that certainty is a feeling, not a measurement. It can burn just as bright when you're wrong as when you're right, which means it can't be trusted to tell the difference. The people who moved knowledge forward weren't the ones who never erred. They were the ones who could eventually say, "I was mistaken," and follow the evidence somewhere new. Maybe the real mark of a great mind isn't being right. Maybe it's staying genuinely willing to find out you weren't. So the next time you feel completely sure about something, including anything you heard here, hold it a little more loosely and ask what evidence would change your mind. If that kind of honest, curious thinking is what you're here for, consider subscribing to Talk to Caleb, and let's keep sitting with the hard questions together. Subscribe to Talk to Caleb.